Welcome back to the Conquest of Happiness. In today's lecture on video, we're going to be covering the topic of affection and the family, which Bertrand Russell originally covers over the course of two chapters, chapters 12 and 13. The reason I've lumped these together is we're really talking quite simply about relationships, our interpersonal life. And as we recall in the PERMA model developed by Martin Seligman and crew in the 2010s, one of the 5 components of happiness and well-being is relationship. So I think it's kind of effective to think about affection, Bertrand Russell's take on affection and the family together. And when I say family, what I really mean is our closest family, the kind of literal sense that we usually use family, but also our extended family. So by family, we need to think about our primary family, but also our circle of friends, colleagues, acquaintances, and even the kind of family that we have in our community, right? What are the quality of our interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis with the many people we usually interact with? That all constitutes our family. And our if we are in a family that is nourishing and values us authentically and is functioning well and is full of warmth and love and support, then generally this contributes greatly to happiness. Of course, lacking that or having toxic or noxious elements in our family system also causes a lot of suffering. Needless to say, we need to contend with relationship as a vital part of happiness and kind of wrap our heads around how happy relationships look, function, and offer us. So I really want to put these two chapters in the context of attachment theory, which actually didn't gain any ground for decades after The Conquest of Happiness was written. So the pioneering work of John Bowlby came out in the late 50s and didn't really, start to infiltrate psychology until much later. And again, The Conquest of Happiness was written in the 30s. And so I think this really helps, this newer framework can help situate some of these ideas really well. And the primary idea is that Bertrand Russell is just sort of speculating on the disadvantages that people who, through unfortunate childhoods of various sorts, have insecure attachment styles in adulthood, which he finds, he's not using this language, but someone who is beset with an insecure attachment style has a rockier road in the quest or pursuit of happiness than someone who has inherited through a rather fortunate, nourishing, tuned childhood to have a secure attachment style. And so if we take a leap here, Bertrand Russell might be saying that secure attachment that allows us to bond in healthy ways greatly increases our happiness. Luckily, through the science and art of psychotherapy and healing, those who have had unfortunate childhoods to varying degrees can heal their attachment style and win by hard work secure attachment that really helps us in the quest for happiness. We might say that being loved is a critical psychological foundation, creates a critical function for us that really promotes our well-being and flourishing. And that in those original attachment studies, it promoted in children with secure attachment to their mothers, and some of the original research studies, exploratory behavior. So children who felt secure were more adventurous, took more risks, and by doing that, develop more competencies and skill sets, which is also linked to happiness, as we know from the introduction to this section regarding building a good and meaningful life, that we know that actualizing our latent talents is really important to being fulfilled. And if we can't explore the world because we lack internal safety, then we're going to be limited in terms of the happiness that we can win through these efforts that help us towards self-mastery. So attachment is really foundational. That security, both inner security, feeling secure in oneself, and feeling secure in our relationships. We have to really internalize security first through it being modeled externally. So the process is that through healthy relationships, we can internalize a feeling of security. So safety and security are really something that a good family system and the right energy in that family system, which Bertrand Russell's calling affection here, provides us. So, right, on the flip side, when we lack loving attachment to ourselves, we tend to have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, are pervaded by insecurities and corresponding defenses, which becomes sort of a neurotic style of life that is not compatible with living in a healthy and happy manner. Jonathan Haidt, in his own happiness hypothesis, a leading voice in the science of happiness, agrees in his own happiness formula, love is implicated. So he says in his own book on page 219, we can't be happy without having friends and secure attachments to other people. A kind of definitive statement on the matter. Bertrand Russell talks about how, or unpacks his notion of affection, which he finds is an essential quality in good relationships, which I think some of these points are useful here. He finds that reciprocal and free affection is the kind of affection that we want to be looking out for. That the affection that we're given by people be genuine, be respectful of our own subjectivity, so not like a tit for tat thing of I'm going to give you love if you give me love back, and that ego relatedness to others that displays itself in things like possessiveness or a will to dominate, or for example objectifying the other as a security blanket or a perennial source of support or interest or love, contaminates and constrains what he might call true affection. And here's a quote: the failure of the family to provide the fundamental satisfactions which in principle it's capable of yielding is one of the most deep-seated causes of discontent. It kind of goes against the grain of our biological hardwiring that we now know. We are wired for attachment. We are wired to connect and relate. It regulates us. It's a part of our species at the species level. It's not a free choice. It's grounded in instincts. He says, without a nourishing family, a deep need remains ungratified, producing dissatisfaction and listlessness. To be happy in this world, especially when youth is past, it's necessary to feel oneself not merely an isolated individual whose day will soon be over, but part of the stream of life flowing on from the first germ to the remote and unknown future, which kind of has an interplay with that model of happiness that talks about the pleasurable life, the good life, and the meaningful life. That really talks about that sphere, which is the meaningful life, that suggests that we need some kind of transpersonal, beyond the personal aim, a cause, a contribution to plug into in order to feel really satisfied with our lives. Along those lines, I've kind of summarized from about page 179 that he might say that multi-generational transmission of projects and purpose combats futility, which otherwise deadens emotions and causes us to be prone to depression and despair, especially in later life. And so what we're really getting at here is that the quality of our attachments matters a lot to happiness. The amount and diversity of our attachments matters a lot to happiness. And it's kind of it goes along these lines that if we have really bad attachments, really toxic relationships, that's probably worse than being a loner in the world. But if we have good, nurturing connections, that probably gives us something beyond what we can just provide being in a hyper self-sufficient mode that we might otherwise be. So attachment is very loaded because there's a lot of payoff potential in it, but there's also a lot that it can be costly or risky in doing so. But we can't escape it. I mean, you know, we can choose different lifestyles, but we are always already participating in an interconnected world where it's hardly even possible to conceptualize what it would be like to sort of live on a secluded island, even though some people might do that rarely. Lastly, it's really fitting that we would cover affection in the family in this section, section 2, as I want to remind us or introduce to some viewers the old Freudian notion that love and work and love is all there is. It's a really nice way to conceptualize what we're here on Earth to do. And it's a nice simplification with all our proliferating content. So we just covered the domain of love. There's a lot to explore in terms of what love means, how to cultivate it, what loving relationships look like. I think this is a wonderful topic. And these are just a few, reflections on such. And we're saying that love is essential, if we boil it down this way, to happiness. So is work. So the next lecture on video is going to implicate work in our happiness project. And that video is entitled Constructive Work and Impersonal Interests. And we'll be covering that next. Stay tuned.